Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and spending your Saturday. It's been delightful for me to see all of you here and to hear these wonderful presentations. My name is Nassim Nouri. I am with she, her, and I'm with the Green Party of Santa Clara County in California, as well as the Green Party of California. I'm also a California delegate to the National Party, and I'll just start my little presentation. I'm actually living in the ancestral lands of Tembian Ohlone tribal lands, and I'd like to pay them respect and the history of being stewards of our land. Let me go ahead and start. Hopefully everybody can see my shared screen. Okay, thank you so much. As I mentioned, if you'd like actually to contact me, my email is on this slide. I've also included a link to this presentation. It's a PDF version of it. It's a very short presentation, mostly very obvious things. So actually, if you'd like to have that, it's in the chat. I think in this, let me turn the chat on as well. So if you do have questions, I can see it. Okay, so let's just get started. And I just wanted to give a reminder to everybody that, you know, the Green Party of California really has always been eco-socialist, and probably all of us are too. So it wasn't a huge revelation for us. It really was manifested in the way we talked about it. The path that we took was pretty structured, although we did make it up as we went along. We actually had Greens from 5 different California county Green parties that got together. We just informally started having discussions about eco-socialism. We then put together a series of 3 discussions and presentations on eco-socialism with some awesome folks who have joined us today as well. They were attended collectively by about 130 people. They were mostly Greens, but not all of them were Greens. We heard back and learned some lessons actually and one of the main things we learned was to simplify the concepts that we had around eco-socialism to kind of key statements. We went on to draft the Eco-Socialism Preamble to our large platform, 260 platform planks that we have. The strategy we talked about was that really eco-socialism relates to just about every plank we have. It isn't a separate plank because it is an overriding umbrella of who we are and what we do. And that was the reason why we chose to make it a preamble. We then moved on to seek and ended up receiving endorsement from all those 5 county Green parties. After we came up with the final version, we worked very hard and had a lot of input and wordsmithing around simplifying that message. And then we proposed it to our General Assembly delegation. That for California Green Party is a decision-making authority. And these are delegates from all active county Green parties that represent their parties and vote on the decisions that we make for the state party. And when we did take that vote, the Eco-Socialism Platform Preamble was approved in July of last year by 69% of California delegates. So this entire process took us about 6 months. A little bit longer in terms of discussions that we had, but it was manageable in terms of the work that we had to do, and that's why we took our time. Really, our discussions revolved around the questions. How do we articulate our 10 key values? We focused on those values because really they inform all of our platform planks. They inform the work we do. They inform our rhetoric. And the question really was, no matter how we articulate it, how are others hearing that? Our articulation, our expression, and our commitment to those values. How do others see that? And that's where we realized that this is a matter of, as much a matter of communication as it is a declaration of who we are. So the ideas we talked about was first to simplify the talk. We stand for a lot of awesome things and ideals. How do we simplify it so people understand at the core of us as Greens who we are? And then being honest about what we stand for. We heard a few folks who were hesitant about, well, if we call ourselves socialists, they may think we are ABC. If we say we are eco-socialists, it may confuse them. Maybe we should hold back and break things gently to people. And I think as Greens, we all agree it's probably good to be honest. And, we already are the recipient of the wrath of the capitalist world, and no point in holding back on truly who we are. So I would say the first and foremost thing that we were thinking is that we are first proud of our values. There is no point in hiding them. And then the ideas we talked about is, how do we show what we stand for? What is the walk part of our talk? How do we do the things we stand for? How do we be the things that we stand for? And that's why the answers that we came through these discussions was that eco-socialist practices are really walking the talk of green values in every way we looked at those values. And another thing that compelled us to engage in this process was that we had to find ways of communicating who and what we are as California Greens. So that's a very short answer to a lot of emails. I just wanted to share the 3 presentation and discussion sessions that we had. Thank you to all the amazing people. I'm not even going to name names because you know them all, but we had the ideas and input from so many people who are on this call and others. We started with just an introduction. What is the goal? Where are we going? And that was called Towards an Eco-Socialist Future. In the chat, if you click on that PDF, these links are live, so you can go and see, get the video of these presentations that we did. Next, we moved on, and again, this took well over 3 months, 4 months that we worked on these 3 presentations. Next, we focused on how do you go from the theory of eco-socialism to practicing eco-socialism? And this is where I think we got a really good articulation of what eco-socialism is. What does it look like? And we heard Kali, we've heard David Kopp talk about these institutions and practices. We heard today from Margaret Kimberly about land trust. We talk about healthcare all the time. What are the practical applications of these organizations, institutions, and practices of eco-socialism? Everything we stand for has a root in eco-socialism. And then from here, we moved on to looking at global movements and trying to engage on how are these movements starting at a very, very local grassroots level, as Colin mentioned, and really pollinating across not just states and regions and bioregions, but countries and nations. And these were really inspiring talks from myself, and a lot of input and discussions that we got was very helpful in these presentations. When we got the same questions, we understood that we have to articulate those points a little bit better and more clearly. So after these discussions, as I mentioned, we created what we hope to be a very simple version of our preamble. This is available on this link that you see at the bottom. This is what sits on top of California platform, and it's a preamble to all of our 60 plus planks. And I won't read through it, but the very first sentence really embodies what we talked about. The Green Party of California works to build an alternative system for a socially and racially just, ecologically sustainable, democratic, and peaceful society that exists in harmony with nature. when we talk about nature and our space in it, is how we mentioned, how do we live within our ecological means? You know, we talk about budgets, and we all know what it's like to be forced to live within a monetary budget and within our monetary means. But we, in eco-socialism, we are expanding that to how do we live within our ecological means. So this, we continued, we call this alternative social, economic, and political system eco-socialism, which is founded on democracy, equity, and solidarity. We list some very obvious concepts that are fundamental to eco-socialism, and then we also explain that we have these other segments in our platform. So feel free to please go and read that. Some of us thought this is still too long. It's as close as we could get it. And then the question was, now what? What do we do? We came up with this great page on our website. So the follow-up is really the hard part, is really was the battle, and that we still are working. This is the work that continues. We needed to share our eco-socialist, and I just, you know, shorten eco-socialist for ES, stands to share our eco-socialist stand with state Greens. Let them know what we did and what we accomplished. We got emails back. We got support. We had a few Republicans on our contact list that commended us for doing this even. Next was to reflect our eco-socialist declaration in our social media and media, and then incorporate it into our party's statement of purpose with the California Secretary of State. This is a practical sense because for some voters, it's the first introduction they have to us as Greens. And then the important thing was to get feedback and roll that into our rhetoric, fine tune where this is not articulating with people. Next was to grow and highlight our projects, our eco-socialist projects we all do and we all engage in, and then call them that. Remind people these are eco-socialist practices. I think I personally don't often do that, don't do it enough. And then connect eco-socialism to Green's local work that we do in mutual aid and community building. It's why most of us are Green Party members, actually. That's our door. And then offer the Greens eco-socialist electoral path to young independent left. Again, I really very much appreciate that Colin mentioned this, because this isn't just, you know, rhetoric that we can leverage. This is what young people are looking for, and how to reach them, I think, is continues to be maybe one of our challenges. And then really weave eco-socialism into the depth and details of our platform. And truthfully, this is kind of where we are now in terms of what have we done and what we're trying to do. We've done a few of the very obvious things. We are still trying to get feedback and then fine tune our rhetoric, and then so on. We've done a little bit of that. And in terms of where we go next, I would just love to invite everybody to get into this discussion about letting us know what, and for us to discuss what you all think where your parties are, and what are the challenges that you might have in terms of what we experience. So if we can turn this into a discussion, I would very much appreciate it. So I know this was quite a short presentation, but first maybe we'll take questions and then have you participate in one last slide that I have, which is some specific questions that I love to pose to you all. So let's move on to, you know, what are some good questions for us to talk about? I would love to know, what are the biggest challenges? What is your big wall in getting the word out? I feel like we heard today from all of our amazing eco-socialists the best articulation of what we are and who we are and what we can do. The question is, why isn't this message getting out? Why don't we have 1,000 people listening to us and really understanding and joining us? And maybe California is a very good example to look at. One of the these swing in registrations, of course, affects us dramatically. But this year is the first year that the state party created an opportunity to have a left unity slate. Sounds familiar because Howie really did an amazing work on that front in 2020. And it simply makes sense. Instead of electorally dividing ourselves, creating an opportunity to gain ballot access and maintain ballot access, I mean, in California, through a left unity slate was the strategy that our delegates voted for, and we have endorsed this slate of combined peace and freedom registered candidates as well as green candidates. And to Laura's point, both parties benefit from that. But the fact is that we have a national ballot strategy and Peace and Freedom doesn't. So it does afford them more local focus in terms of the work they do. And I think PSNL really does feed into that. And this is, I just wanted to mention something that Sam talked about. This is that fine line of electoral versus movement building, right? And there are a lot of young people who don't accept that doing electoral will make a difference. So to Sam's point, her view is that, well, what's the point of dealing with the Green Party or working with the Green Party? This is exactly where eco-socialism comes in. Because in practical sense, we are practicing eco-socialism, which is mutual aid, it's community building. It's exactly what our values and platform are built around. And it's what young people are doing naturally. They see the devastation that's happening, not just to our planet, but to our communities of color, to our families, to healthcare, and they're pitching in. So I just don't want to ramble on, but I just wanted to say that there is a both here, that to keep an electoral option open for when the masses are awakened by the demise of the single party structure, but to also participate in eco-socialist practices that helps us and our neighbors right on our streets, is what the Green Party is offering and can offer more if we can articulate it to more people. I guess I had a couple of other questions if there are answers to it. So I asked what our biggest challenges were. If anybody wants to say, what is your biggest challenge to articulate eco-socialist values and practices to your community? Another question I had is, what were your easiest successes? What's the easiest thing that demonstrates our eco-socialism? And what lessons were learned from that? There are very, very, very few representatives, elected representatives that aren't green, that are pushing for our values. And this is where we have to remind them that this has been always in our platform, right? We are the only national party that's corporate free. We're the only national party that has had these, not just eco-socialist values before we declared ourselves eco-socialist, but human values that we are able only to advocate these human platforms because we are not bought. We are the only national unbought party. So I think this goes back to working with other people, right? Why not work with elected members that are pushing for these policies? Because by doing that, we highlight how their party is working against their values and their constituents and their supporters. So the public shame and blame that we can engage in is definitely valuable in articulating our position. I'm sorry, I should apologize. I said that I will read a comment by Cindy, who says, one of the biggest challenges I see is that we attract people with the GND and other platform planks, but then we don't retain those potential members. They're not engaged and motivated to stick with the Greens, and so they move on to other groups and activities. It's a very good point, Cindy. Thank you for sharing that. I would offer my suggestions, and maybe I don't certainly have an answer, but I agree that it's difficult to retain people. And I think it gets us back to the kind of a scarcity model we work in within the Green Party. Do we have enough people to onboard volunteers? There's some really practical kind of how-tos and should we and who will do it. I'm sure Michael would would agree with me. There's really a lot of check boxes we have to check. And when someone comes to us, where do we plug them in? Who's an active person doing what? There are some tools that we could build more of, but we do need to have more hands on board. And one of the things that, again, I go back to is I don't want to stick a new volunteer to go, do some policy research unless they really want to. I want to connect them with their local group that's practicing eco-socialist, ideals, that they're doing practical things. What I do with the single payer on an everyday basis, which is sometimes it's a banner drop on a highway, swallowing fumes and hanging a banner that says, call this your assembly member, this guy, this is his number, he hasn't voted yes yet. And sometimes I'm part of an unhoused a response group, URGE, which is a mutual aid group distributing life essentials to unhoused people in my county. And sometimes it's me knee deep in mud under a bridge, handing out a sandwich, or blankets. But through our work, we have gathered really strong support from electeds. And those electeds have to know that there's a Green doing this, that a Green co-founded this. Jake Tonkel, one of our candidates who ran for city council in San Jose, was one of the first people who started packing these backpacks for us. So again, going back to what Sam brought up, do we think this is an electoral activity, or is it mutual aid? Is it building our communities? So it can be both, because if we're doing that at the same time and reminding people that there are Greens doing this, if we're seen being green, which I try to be, then we are gaining respect, and as David mentioned, connecting with DSA members or other progressives. But these electeds that are pushing for AB 1400, our version of improved and extended Medicare for all, know very well that the Green Party is behind them, because we won't let them forget that they know we're behind these policies. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Well said, Nassim. And I want to lift up Cindy's comments in the chat for folks who may not be able to access it. She says, I do think we need to have onboarding committees to help bring people into the Green Party and help them to stick with it. And I completely agree with that. I also wanted to just make an observation, and that is that people join movements. They do not join internal squabbles. The only thing of interest if there's any interest at all in internecine sort of debating, are people who are already deeply in it. And it's actually a turnoff for most people. So I think that we have to have place for political discourse and discussion. Folks know that I believe in political education. I believe in having those conversations, but they should not be the places where we're actually thinking we're going to recruit people. And if that's all we do when we gather people, then we're anti-organizers. That's point one. Point two, I think that we need to do a better job, all of us, in practicing the pitch or the elevator pitch, or like the inspirational why join the Green Party. And I'm going to do it. And again, not because you look how good I am, but I've practiced it, right? And like, you won't be able to do this because this is David Cobb's pitch. Laura Wells can't do David Cobb's pitch. She does Laura Wells' pitch. Nadia does Nadia's pitch. James will do James's pitch. So, but here's what comes naturally to me because it's true and it inspires me. And it goes like this. If you want transformational, systematic change in this country, not just quibbling, niggling at the margins, but if you recognize, like I do, that this country is fundamentally racist, fundamentally sexist, fundamentally class oppressive, and that these systems are literally destroying the planet that we depend upon for life itself. If you know that the way I do, then I'm going to appeal to you to join the Green Party and to say there is a historic precedent for how you can actually make systemic transformational change in this country. It's actually very simple to describe, super hard to do, but very simple to describe. And it really only takes two things. One, you need a mass movement that is broad, deep, politically conscious and aware, committed to educating itself and challenging that system. So you need a broad, mass, educated, conscious mass movement. Second, you need an electoral arm of that mass movement that can use the existing mechanisms of the bourgeois state apparatus to implement the principles and values of that. So it's 1, 2. Hard to put those two together, but once it happens, look at what's happened. And I'm going to now give you a list of what it took to advocate at the ballot box the kinds of things that actually happened in this country. Here it goes. 1, the abolition of slavery, women's right to vote, the creation of the Social Security Administration, unemployment insurance, workers' compensation laws, pure food and drug laws, ending child labor, the ability to actually vote for the United States senator to represent you. For goodness sakes, the entire fabric of what we today would consider the bare damn minimum for a decent and just society, that entire fabric was woven together by third-party activists, so-called third-party activists. Let's just call them alternative party activists, people who did their work when they were called naive and unrealistic, people who did their work when they were told it could never actually happen, people who did their work when they were called spoilers. So today, friends, if you want to live in a society, not just talk about it, but actually live in a society that will address the climate catastrophe that's happening, if you want to live in a society that guarantees access to healthcare is a fundamental human right, if you want to live in a society that will guarantee adequate housing for everyone as a fundamental human right, if you want to live in that society, you've got to have the same courage and conviction that people before us did and join a mass movement and a political party that's advocating for that. And the only party that does that is the Green Party. So I'm going to stop, and obviously I went hard on it, right? But that's the kind of, like, we have to have pitches that inspire people. Here's the second thing. Oh, let me also tell you, Greens have elected more people to office than any other progressive independent party since the 1930s in this country. We have actually elected literally thousands of people at the local municipal level. That's because we can avoid the so-called spoiler effect and just run on our values. Literally over 1,000 Greens have been elected since our formation. Like, no party has done that since the socialists in the 1930s. And we have solutions to the winner-take-all system that's forcing people to vote against what they hate the most rather than allowing them to vote for what they want. For elections where there's only one possible winner, it's ranked choice voting, but the better electoral system is proportional representation, which would allow genuine democracy and allow multi-parties to flourish. So thanks for that opportunity, Nassim. Again, I wasn't trying to show off, although I'm a true believer, and I'm asking everybody to find your voice as a Green Party cheerleader as well.
Well, hot diggity dang, David, because I am going to copy you. I'm going to get that recording and I'm going to practice it exactly what you said. Is that okay?
You know me, Nassim, I copy left everything I do because the planet is at stake. We ain't got no time for private property rights on good ideas.
Exactly. I'm taking all of your words. I'm going to put my Nassim scream on it, but I really appreciate it. And the talk about ending on inspiring. We're at 2:55. I really want to thank all of you. I really appreciate this discussion because we should have more of that, but what an ending. Bravo. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Michael, and we might go back to, oh no, do we stay here?
Yes, this is where we stay for the final closing session, and Gloria Matera will join us. My guess is, and remember, we don't get started till 3 o'clock for the final session, so we've got 5 minutes. But so folks will be joining us, but Gloria and I will facilitate the very last session. So if folks want to continue to use the chat or what have you, you're welcome to it, but I am going to take a bio break myself.
Thank you all so much. Me too.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. See if people are coming back from the last session. And this is our final session of the day. So thank all of you who were here for the duration or even just were able to spend part of the day with us. Hey, David, you want to get started? Hi.
Hello, yes, I sure do, Gloria. Thank you so much. You want to kick us off, or shall I? But it sounds like you've already got it started.
I just was welcoming people. I guess for me, again, I want to say thanks everyone. I think this was a really great day. Thanks to all our presenters and participants. People were really engaged. I really have just like lots of little notes about things that happened throughout the day from beginning to end. I just want to make, one comment right away is how Margaret and Kali started us off is interesting because when, for those of you in the Solidarity Economy presentation with Emily Kawano, or if you were not or seen before, she also kind of said, like, we're looking at what, this period right now, the work we're doing, and what we're trying to achieve, and mentioned the same fourth kind of presence for us, the COVID, social justice uprising, the climate crisis, and the rising fascism. So I thought it was interesting that we made note of that in the beginning, and at least one of our later sessions also made note of that. And I'm just wondering, David, if you kind of see that similar in terms of the context where we're doing our work.
Yes, thank you, Gloria. And like you, I want to say thank you to all of the presenters, but really more importantly, all of you who, we had about 25 to 30 people through the course of the day. And I want to thank everybody who came to engage in this process, especially because I think that one thing that the Green Party has not done as great a job as we should, and that is to create the space for what in my tradition we call political education, right? It's what, like, debate is different than really discussing and going deep and allowing for differences of opinion, but to really come into that with an open mind and with an effort to have a better understanding. And I thought that this entire day was really a stellar example of that. I also appreciated how from jump, Kali and Margaret really set a tone of what is happening, and I'll use the language, in this historic conjuncture, right? Remember that it is my belief that we are not merely in, like, we're always in some moment in history, but this is an epoch, right? Like, we are literally at the moment where there are going to be fundamental transformational changes, whether we like it or not. And I think it's important to recognize that a conjuncture, like, if you want to understand history or what is happening right now, 99 times out of 100, just study yesterday, right? And if you want to know what's going to happen tomorrow, 99 times out of 100, just study what's happening today, because history tends to move in patterns and arcs, right? However, conjunctures are different. Historians point to moments where there are profound and abrupt changes. That's what they call conjunctures. And a hat tip to the great Italian Marxist and revolutionary Antonio Gramsci, who really laid this out, because what Gramsci and others say is that there are moments in time where there are internally inherently contradictory positions of patterns that come to a point where there's going to be a break, and there's going to be something either completely different or the direction is going to go off in another way. And what I thought Kali and Margaret and every presenter touched on, and that is, we have an ecological crisis. It's not coming, it's here and getting worse. But wait, it gets worse, because we have an economic crisis known as late stage capitalism. Capitalism can't solve the economic crisis because capitalism is the economic crisis. And to be clear, that crisis is happening for two reasons. One, because capitalism requires the commodification of Mother Earth. There's literally a definition of capitalism, and it cannot continue. We're consuming Mother Earth faster than she can replenish herself. But 2B is, even if there's some crazy technological fix, which I do not believe is possible, but even if it happened that another Earth was somehow magically available to us, or some new technology allowed us to address the energy crisis that Howie and others so brilliantly discussed, capitalism as an economic system is coming to an end, because it literally expects and needs to extract the surplus value of labor. Like that's literally how it works. And with robotics, technology, et cetera, that system cannot continue. Howie said it very well. The problem is not a technical one, like not either for the climate crisis or for social justice. Like literally the technological capacity to produce now is far and away more. There's enough to go around, right? That's why the ecological crisis and the economic crisis are creating a political crisis, which is why fascism is rising, because the system cannot solve these problems. And I don't mean the system just can't solve the problem of, the climate crisis or, the racist murder by the state against our Black and brown siblings. I don't just mean that it can't solve the problem of hunger. I'm saying something profoundly different. I'm saying the system can't even do what it's designed to do, which is maintain order. We are entering a phase of polarization. Many people are predicting civil war. The reality is that an ecological, economic, and political crisis are converging. And I genuinely believe we are either going to have some version of eco-socialism or some version of fascism. Like there's no way to square these two systems. So to me, Gloria, that was the big picture that I saw running through it all, that the Green Party is not just the alternative, it really is the imperative. And I'm going to drop into the link because before I turn it back to you, any observations you have, and that is to encourage people to join us in the Green Eco-Socialist Network. We are a dues-based organization. And we have made a pledge that when we have 100 dues payers, that we're going to have elections. You'll note Michael O'Neill, Peter, Gloria, myself, Margaret, Mel Figueroa, we always call ourselves the interim steering committee because we founded the organization on this idea, but we are eager to hit that 100-person mark so that we can trigger democratic elections for the steering committee. So Gloria, I'll pass it back to you before we open it up for some discussion.
Thank you, David. And I really, I completely agree with, the framing of the big picture that you let out there. And I'm so interested to hear what other people have to say. And, I wanted to add the piece of some of the more kind of practical here and now, because I like to think as an organizer, I feel comfortable in that space. And also I feel like people are, we need that political education. I think you're right, something the Green Party really needs to step more into. And I also think that, people want to be armed with the tools sorry about the war metaphor, but want to be, they want to have the tools to be able to have these conversations. I posed this early on when we were talking with Kali and Margaret, which is, how do we stay true to this, our principles, what eco-socialism is, and I think you clearly laid out why we need eco-socialism and need to work towards that and build this movement. And how do we have those conversations? I'm thinking of different constituencies. I don't know in every situation what I say, we're either going to have some form of fascism or some form of eco-socialism. But the things that came up in some of the sessions today, I think really show these concrete ways of what a just, equitable, system will be like, a society. And I'm thinking it's interesting that several of our sessions really focused on land, whether you're talking about, when you were talking about the sovereignty in terms of land, we're talking about tenants, working with tenants and tenants' rights, the fight for fair housing around eco-socialism, and the community land trust that Margaret talked about, particularly for New York City, but of course we heard several other models. And, I'm kind of curious about that because one thing that came up in a session that basically said, that's the one thing mutual aid can't really do. I think we're, in terms of food sovereignty, we're trying to feed people, we're trying to provide some services for people, especially during the pandemic and during this challenging economic time. But in terms of giving people the right to housing, to safe shelter, is really something that has to be done on a systemic level. And that's not something we can do in a patchwork way, right? And I think that's something maybe that might be we can continue to take up as a conversation around community land trusts, around, tenants' rights, and the different ways that we can see how, providing the basics for people first. And I think that came up in David's session, David Bond, which is we can't organize people to fight for some of these other things without that. So how do we connect that? And I'll stop there.
So and thank you to the folks who are using the chat. One thing that I'm going to do is do a quick opportunity. I'm going to literally call on folks. Feel free to pass, but because I know that a lot of times there are those of us, and I am one of them, that are quick to participate, quick to engage, but other folks are not quite like that. And I respect that. So feel free to pass. I'm not putting anybody on the spot, but I am just going to let folks know I'm going to go down the list, and it'll go like this: Eleanor, then Justin, then Christine, then Nassim. And if you don't want to go, you don't have to, but I am literally opening the space for any reflections or comments here as we close out. Eleanor, Justin.
I would like to be at the end of the line rather than first.
Let's go to Peter, Justin, Margaret, Christine. Peter?
Yeah, thank you. No, I really enjoyed the sessions. I took a lot from them. I'm actually wanting to, I didn't get a chance to see Margaret's because I was doing my own session at the same time, but these things are going to be available to us. I think they're worth a rewatch, and maybe even for distribution purposes. I think it's easy to get frustrated and, look around. If you think about us, we're all, some of you may live in the same city. I know there's a few people from New York City, but most of us are spread out throughout the landscape. I think take that as a positive rather than a negative, right? This is our extended community, and we have to broaden that. And so I echo the wish to spread this and get more people involved, and recognize that, we don't have to, put our heads under the pillow and just hope the bomb doesn't explode, right? We are part of the transformational change that is undergoing right now. And that's an exciting time. Thank you.
All right, I think I was next on the list. All right, just briefly, thank you all the presenters and the organizers of this. I learned a lot. I love chances to learn all about this. We're at a time when you can ask most people what is socialism, and they don't even know that, let alone something called eco-socialism and all of the many facets and elements and ways that plays out. So it's good for all of us to get on the same page with all of these things and kind of hash it out here. And it just it's one step along the way, and we do it again and keep expanding it, get more people involved. Thanks, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Well, this was a great day. I feel like I too learned a lot from my fellow presenters and from people asking questions and giving input. I think there's a term that we should include when we talk about green eco-socialism, and that's human rights. We're talking about human rights, the human right to housing, to work, a non-racist nation. So I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. It's a pretty high bar we're setting, and rightfully so, at this juncture in history. So we're not just talking about, this is not a talk shop. This is very, very serious stuff. And when there is a reaction or opposition to what we do, that's an indication of how powerful eco-socialism is, and what a threat it is to powerful interests in the country and around the world. Thank you.
I think I'm next, David. was I next on the list?
Yes.
I really appreciate being here today in the middle of this whiteout here in New York. There was nowhere to go, so I sat here all day. And I really enjoyed listening to everybody. I learned a lot. I talk about the Green Party a lot, about our principles and our values everywhere I go, in the doctor's office, in the dentist's office, online, to people overseas. And one thing that has helped me locally that I just wanted to mention is that I have some little business cards mentioning the Green Party and our local telephone number. And anyone I talk to, I always make sure I give them the card, because I think it's really important that people think about what I said, even if I say, gee, I'm really worried about the loss of jobs here on Long Island. I've been, the Green Party has some really good ideas, and maybe some of them will work to help our community. And even if they don't answer me, or they say they're a Republican or this or that, no matter what they want to do to argue with me, I always give them a card. And those business cards are so much cheaper than those big flyers. It's hard to give a big flyer out, but I can certainly give a business card to everybody. I did it in the supermarket with a guy that was standing next to me yesterday buying cheese, and he was telling me how we need a Republican president again. I didn't argue with him, but I said one or two things, and he really listened. But I appreciate being here today, and all the preparation that people did to present a good day today. Thanks a lot, David, and Gloria for hosting too. Over.
I'll go next, I think. Thank you so much for all the organizers and the speakers. I always learn from everyone that is green, and that's something I don't always say. I learn a lot from other people who aren't green as well, but what I'm taking home is mostly inspiration. We hear a lot about what we can't do and what our challenges are and what walls we hit all the time, but knowing that you're all out there, hearing your ideas, hearing your hope and enthusiasm about that role that we deserve inspires me. So I really, really appreciate you all. And a great idea. Thank you so much, Christine, for mentioning the card. I just dropped our little state party card that you can customize. So this is a really easy one. And we should make one for GPUS and be able to put a sticker with local contact information. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nassim. And yeah, I'm really grateful for this conference and everyone who participated, and I hope you will spread the word about the Green Eco-Socialist Network. And we really need additional capacity in GEN to accomplish even sort of our interim goals right now. Putting together a conference like this takes time and some technical capacity and some resources, and this is really just the kind of the baseline, right, of what we need to be doing. And I take hope from a space like this because mainstream political discourse and even what we could call a mainstream of political discourse in so-called progressive spheres or even leftist spheres seems to be designed to derail into dead ends and non-solutions as much as possible, and to remain the sphere of just conflicting personalities and cliques and conflicting tribes. And we desperately need political leadership within the Green Party and within our broader movement of people who are passionate and compelling in talking about some of the real solutions, the concrete solutions to big problems that we have been talking about here today. Pass.
Hey, this is Laura. Looks like I'm next. One of the things that I've
forgotten about so far during the day in terms of an inspiration is looking at the other countries in this hemisphere, in the Americas, and particularly the what Trump called the troika of tyranny, which is Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, and a lot of other countries as well. But those three are getting the illegal sanctions from the US, and Biden ramped them up even. But one of the lessons learned from them is that when Hugo Chavez became president of Venezuela, he knew he couldn't stand alone and needed to have regional integration. You cannot stand alone against the empire and win as a nation or as a political party. And so I just want to say that we're doing the Left Unity slate in California, where we're running for statewide offices with Greens and Peace and Freedom together, working together. But I also wanted to say that the countries in Latin America took a lot of hits in the last dozen years, where they lost the entire government, and they fought, stayed with it, stayed on the ground, stayed door to door, as Peter was talking about, as what he did in his mayoral and city council campaigns. But they went door to door, and they came back up against the US empire. And they are moving towards socialism. It's socialism for their countries, which will have a different flavor from one country to the other, just like eco-socialism will have a different flavor in every state of the United States. But anyway, I wanted to point to that as an inspiration. I mean, they were going up against the empire, the military, economic, huge power. They had some losses, and then they came back. They just stayed steady. So that's it for me.
We have Ellen up next if you'd like to go or pass.
Were you saying me?
Ellen,
Sorry.
or we can just jump to Ivan, come back to Ellen. So if you look in the chat, David put an order of everyone, just to be able to kind of keep this moving. So maybe we'll just move to Nadia. Then we have Sam. And James. Liana. Cindy.
I just wanted to say thank you all for having this today. I jumped in later this afternoon after having to do a few other things today. It's just nice to know there are other eco-socialists out there, socialist persons, especially living in the subarctic Midwest. And I think we're often overlooked out here in the flyover zone, as they call it. But we have a lot of potential, and I think we have a lot of potential eco-socialists here. They just don't know it yet. And I think it behooves us to get the information out there that they're very disappointed with the current status quo. We've been left behind. We have poisoned water. We have a lot of ecological and other social issues that we're dealing with, policing, everything. But I think if we keep the faith and we keep the information flowing and it gets out there and we can present it where it's not ignored, by the masses, we're going to get there. But we're the sleeping giant, I do believe, if we can get the Midwest to wake up and realize eco-socialism is the future, not fascism, we will save the planet. But that's just my opinion, maybe. But I'm hoping that will be it. So peace out, everyone. Take care and keep warm, because it's freezing here.
If you're not looking at the chat, there the list is John, Richard, Howie, Sandy.
Yeah, I'm here. However, this is the only session I made it to, so I'm at a bit of a, you know, I wanted to be here for the whole thing. I am a member of GEN. I'm also in System Change, Not Climate Change, and the Global Eco-Socialist Network. And one thing I can share is that System Change, Not Climate Change is having discussions now too about, you know, what's the future, if any, of the organization. It's not large. It's got a great website. It needs to recruit heavily, as does this group, in terms of younger people and the BIPOC communities. It may not be able to do that. It probably can't do that by itself. Gen Europe is also similarly composed of older folks, let's say. And I said Gen Europe, so there you go. It's not a global eco-socialist network. It's pretty European. As David knows, and some of you know, because we did it, System Change, Not Climate Change tried to have one-on-one meetings in the past year with each of those organizations, also Eco-Socialist Horizons. We met with this Gen, and the idea was to assess at the end of that whether we wanted to try to, whether any of us wanted to try for a convergence of eco-socialists altogether. And so, first of all, I want to express gratitude and appreciation for the organization of this one-day event, and to reiterate that offer, if anyone wants to take it up. The second is I've already alluded to, I think, and I put in the chat the piece I wrote about intersectional eco-socialism, which has to do with the need for a much younger-led and BIPOC-led eco-socialist movement, if such a thing is to be. We have to be intersectional and really understand what that means and do it, even though it's hard to do. It's just hard to do. Some of us have done some of that, and I think those folks need to step up in organizations like this and try to make it happen here if they can. The other strategy I have is to align eco-socialists, or to be eco-socialists, in the much broader climate justice movement, the radical wing of the global climate justice movement and the global youth climate justice movement. Those are the circles where we need each other. They need us, we need them. Whether they realize it or not. And finally, I just bring another message of hope, which is, and David knows this too, we both struggled hard in the transition town movement the last 3 years to steer it in a more, at least a post-capitalist direction. And that effort continues. David has perhaps wisely decided not to go further with that. But the good news is that Transition US is about to make a huge pivot in terms of, again, a campaign called Regeneration Nation, a 3-year campaign that will focus on youth leadership and BIPOC leadership. And I actually am willing to wager that they can do that. So, you know, this is all part of a much larger network of movements. And this is our decade, the decade of decision, where we have to be in as many spaces as we can, and as open and collaborative as we can, and willing to think outside our little boxes, and to do that hard work. And, you know, I love this organization. I love what you've done today. And so that's just my normal optimistic, romantic assessment that we can do these things. We need an intergenerational movement. That's obviously what I'm for. I want to work with the young people and in any way possible. So let's go for it. Peace back. Thanks.
Just to remind people who we have just in order to, if they'd like to take a space to talk, Richard, Howie, Sandy, Lizzie. Howie, Sandy, Lizzie.
Okay. Lighting's not good here, but thought you want, for those of you that lip read or need to see the lips, the thing that's on my mind is, we wrap up today is, it's a challenge for us because most of the self-styled eco-socialists in this country, a lot of them are academic. They have no understanding of working independence. System change, not climate change. Everybody I talked to in that group was saying, vote for Biden. In fact, even in states like California, I debated one of them on some podcast. They signed these statements, DSAs full of people like that, as if the Democratic Party is going to carry an eco-socialist program and implement it. It's, this has been part of the socialist tradition going back to Marx, right through people like Debs and Carl Liebknecht, who really weren't Marxists, but they were in the socialist movement, for sure. And, really in the 1930s with the Popular Front, CP said we got to unite with the liberal capitalists to defeat the fascists. That hasn't worked out too well. The liberal capitalists, like the Democratic Party, with their neoliberal, policies, have helped, fertilize the ground for fascism, because people's problems are not being addressed. And so, simplistic solutions, that are about scapegoating and conspiracy fantasies pick up a lot of people. And that's, the mass base for the far right. We really can't have an eco-socialist movement that doesn't have its own independent political party. So, what's on my mind is how do we make that an issue for the people that talk about eco-socialism? I think that's a challenge for us.
Sorry, I have to say, twinkle, twinkle, Howie. Okay. Sandy, Lizzie, Joy.
Yes, I've been kind of in and out all day because I had a Green Party, Erie County Green Party meeting today as well. But these programs are always very good, and what of it I was able to watch. I took great interest in, and I have the link copied to my favorites for the Solidarity Economy candidate questionnaire, because I think I can utilize that going forward in our 2022 campaigns. And I guess that's about it. Thank you for putting this on.
Hi, this is Lizzie, and I will echo what Sandy said in that these programs are always so excellent, from the content to the presenters. Really appreciate it, and just keep it up. We are very supportive. Thanks.
Got Joy, Jacqueline, and Datsa.
Hey, here, I'll even turn my video on. Hey, this is Joy, and I always like to spend some time with like-minded people, and really appreciate just that solidarity, because I'm kind of stuck in Alabama and not super friendly territory. So I really just appreciate having the time with you guys. Thank you so much. And I would like to also say that in the questionnaire session, it reminded me a great deal, having candidates, fill out that questionnaire reminded me a great deal of we have a little Tennessee Valley Progressive Alliance here that is ostensibly, you know, lots of organizations, progressive people trying to build something. COVID kind of put the brakes on a lot of what we were doing. But anyway, at the very beginning of setting things up, we put together a platform, and I was there putting input, and I basically just got the Green Party platform and talked them into every part of it. And the questionnaire, you know, really reminded me of that we have a good platform. Thanks.
So I'm just going to leave the last few names. So it was Jacqueline, Datsa, David S., Eleanor.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. This is Jacqueline, and I just have a concern about the Black community being represented. Specifically, there's a fellow named Tim Black who has a podcast every day of the week, one way or another. Either he's posting something or he's having live interaction with his audience and call-ins and things like that. Now, Tim voted Green in the last two elections, but he doesn't seem to be motivated to promote Green. You know, he won't say the word green, even though he does say that he voted Green every once in a while. So his main platform is about reparations, cut the check, and of course, you know, justice issues, ending qualified immunity. He's very concerned about that. So my concern is, what can we do to, I mean, I believe that reparations are a part of the Green New Deal broader platform, along with, you know, Medicare for all and all of these things. So, but I can't seem to motivate him to promote Green, or to have Howie on, or to have, you know, other representatives of the Green Party on his show. So I'm just voicing my concern. And I would like to see the Green Party reach out to the Black community and promote their views, their platform in regards to the justice, you know, situation, ending qualified immunity, and of course, reparations. A very clear platform for reparations that does include, you know, releasing money to the descendants of Black slaves. Everybody, you know, every election, you know, the Dems, you know, they always come into the Black community and they say, you know, you're the ones who can push us over. You're the ones. And then we see once again, you know, nothing, not even a lot of, you know, to outlaw lynching. We didn't even get an anti-lynching law. We watched Asians get their law for abuse just a few months ago, and then Native Americans, you know, were mentioned as far as, you know, starting a task force to untangle all this violence against Native Americans, which I'm, you know, I identify with. But I'm a mix. You know, I do have Black ancestors. I have white ancestors, but both of my grandmothers were Native. So just as a bird's eye point of view, you know, I'm just wondering, what can we do to get, for instance, Tim and his wolf pack, you know, integrated into the Green movement? I mean, other than just voting, you know, every 4 years for Green. So that's my contribution. I have other things that I could talk about, but right now that's on my heart. Because Black people are just being really, you know, dismissed. You know, they'll pick one person, one Black person. We'll make this one, you know, vice president. We'll make this one into the, we'll pull this one into the Supreme Court. But as far as the masses of Black people and the problems that we're dealing with, I just don't see any concern about that, sincerely, from the Democratic Party. So that's my concern.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and for a very specific ask and a challenge to the party. And I think Howie put something in the chat about Tim Black, but maybe we can follow up with you more specifically on. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I see this. Howie, you said that, you let Tim Black know, and I know that. And it's like, what do we do to motivate him? What do we do to, I think that if we were to say we will cut that check, we get his attention. We will work to end qualified immunity. We will get that attention.
Okay, we're good. Thank you. We're gonna just remind people who are left on the, if they'd like to speak, Datsa, David S, Eleanor, and if your name was called earlier and you want to come back in, please indicate that pretty quickly as we're getting close to the end.
Daisy is next, isn't she? Daisy?
That's a yes, if she would like to. But if not, David, go right ahead.
Okay, well, I want to thank all of the organizers, including my son, who I'm very proud that he is part of this effort. And it was really a very inspiring program today. I want to just remark on what David Cobb posed as a challenge in his remarks in this session, that the choice between fascism and eco-socialism. So I think our challenge is to how we can close the path to fascism and open the path to eco-socialism. Actually, David Cobb shared some time ago Kali Akuno's blog, which he discussed the growing threat of fascism. And actually, in his early remarks in this program, he reiterated that. And I think we need to flesh out a concrete strategy. It isn't enough to say we want to replace capitalism with eco-socialism. Obviously, no one simplifies it that way, but we need a strategy. And I think the first goal is to defeat militarized fossil capital and its political instruments. For example, Senator Manchin and Sinema standing in the way of a very modest Build Back Better bill, which has some good elements that help working class folk. So that's the beginning, and that is just a step to open up a path that can create as a goal an eco-socialist Green New Deal. So that's thank you again for your holding this session. Thank you.
So Eleanor, we're back around to you.
Okay, I have two things I wanted to ask about. One, if anyone can give me any fodder for trying to help convince a friend of mine who is a libertarian, right-wing-ish libertarian, to entertain socialism as not being totalitarian evil. I would appreciate any I hesitate to use the word ammo because I'm nonviolent, but anyone who can send anything my way, I put my email in the chat. And secondly, people who want to get some airtime to discuss green ideas, I'd like to suggest WBAI and other Pacifica stations. Now, Pacifica has some has got a schism in it with people who are progressives and people who wanted to turn it into an NPR light. So if you have not been getting the kind of contact you want with your nearest Pacifica station, contact me and I will try and find out which people in your area are the best ones to approach. And again, feel free to take my email and use it as you see fit to keep in touch.
Thank you. Just a final call for a few people that have passed when we call them, if they'd like to make a final comment. So I guess with that, I'd like to thank everyone, on behalf of the steering committee, interim steering committee, and just echo that I think this is a great home for Greens, Eco-Socialist Greens or Eco-Socialists. And so consider joining our organization, because we really have a lot to build, and people will really have some participation and ownership of doing that. And so I wanted a special thank you for Michael O'Neill, who really handled all this tech and set up registration, and those on the steering committee, interim steering committee, that kind of put some things together. So thank you everyone for being here. Let's go forward and continue our conversations and continue our work together.
Thanks, everybody. Peace out.
Peace, power.
Power to the people.
Power to the people. Peace out.
Power.
Yeah.